Welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for tuning in today. As you can see, I found another astrologer wandering through my universal backyard and brought them in for a class of tea, a cup of tea, and frankly, just to help us figure out what's going on. Oh, there she goes. Because astrology is such an amazing science. And I'm telling you guys, it's helped me so much in my personal life. I've had readings with Dabney. And actually, she's got a really amazing class, very briefly, called Revisioning Your Life in 2025. And I have to say that a friend of mine bought her class before I even knew what was happening. He said, I'm taking Dabney's class. I'm like, she's not even giving it yet. But apparently there's a workbook that you use and you work through your chart. And then she's doing a live part of the class coming up this weekend. But if you're interested, check the description down below, because I can tell you my friend knows about astrology and he found this really helpful even from a beginner standpoint. And he doesn't actually, okay, I'm not going to call him cheap. I'm just going to say, no, how much is this class? It's not even expensive, right?
It's $79 and
Right.
it is 5 recordings, lots of printable, downloadable material, a couple bonuses, and then we're going to have 2 live sessions. And really the intention of the class is to help you understand, and it is intended 100% for beginners. You don't have to know any astrology, and it's really to help you understand your evolutionary path. And so what you can do in 2025, like what are you meant to do in this lifetime? So with all this chaos going on, coming in and focusing on what you're here to do is pretty much the most important thing that we can do right now, I think. And so that's was my intention in creating this class. So
Wow. Well, I can already tell you that my friend is just totally, every time I talk to him, he's telling me about the class. I learned this and I'm learning so much about myself. I'm like, wow. So you guys are interested, again, description, you'll find the link, and it's recorded, like she said, so you can probably come back and check it out. And there's a workbook. I mean, or PDFs to fill out. It's a really well thought out class. But today we're going to talk about, well, we're going to talk about the big picture because it's super important. And you know what? When I was just talking to Dabney, if you're not familiar, this is Dabney Lawless with Lawless Astrology. She's been on my channel before. She's a popular person to have on. Well, the thing is that I realized something, and that is it's all about perspective, right? When we really were super close, or even me, when I was super close, zeroed in on Kamala Harris, zeroed in on Tim Walz, zeroed in on how amazing this is going to be. I kind of missed, 45 ransacking our system. And so why I think what Dabney's going to talk about today is so important, because it's going to give us perspective. And when we step back and look at all the things that are happening, especially through the lens of astrology, which she does in a English human way and not astrological jargon way, you can really understand what's happening, and you can really understand, oh, I don't need to freak out about this, because this is kind of like evolution. This is cycles upon cycles upon cycles. And that's, if you've not watched her channel, she's got a great YouTube channel, and she's done a few videos on history, like the history of history, the history of the United States, the history of the world, but also in regards to astrology and how these things like match up. And when that starts happening, you can kind of see what the future holds a little bit, because you know that these cycles are repeating themselves. And so this year, 2025, we've got some big cycles repeating themselves, really big, momentous cycles that are going to have a big impact on our world, not only the United States, but also our personal lives. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Dabney. You guys get comfortable, because I'm telling you, it's just like a class. This is like a free class. She's amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
thank you, Susan. Well, I like to talk, but at the same time, please interrupt me
Nice.
and we'll have a conversation. Because what I do want to do is outline the coming year. So, but I don't want to be like, and then this ingresses into the Kazumi. Like, I want to just give you the big picture of what I think is happening. And we're all on the same, kind of value system on this channel. All the people that tune into you, we're all feeling the same emotions. We are all, popping open our news browser and like having our heart constrict, and we're holding our breath and our shoulders are going up, because it's like intelligent thinking people seeing into the future and saying, oh my God, this isn't right. This hurts, like, what do I do? How do I protect things? So for me personally, I fall into that category too. And so how I try to make sense of things and have an understanding is looking at patterns. And that's what astrology really is looking at patterns. Why is this happening? Let's make sense of it. Okay. So I'm just going to preview a little bit. I'm going to do a much longer video. I've not recorded it yet, but I'm going to do a much longer, more in-depth video about the book, The Fourth Turning, and the Uranian cycles. And so if you're not familiar with this book, but I'm just going to preview a little of the concepts of it here because I do think it's relevant and will give you some perspective. So basically, it talks about how in an average human life is like, between an 80, 90, maybe 100 years old if you're really lucky, okay? So that breaks down into like 20 to 25 year periods, right? And so that's really a generation. And I did a whole thing about Pluto in the different generations and what happens when Pluto is in each of those generations. And we look at the outer planets, which move much slower than, like, say, your sun or your moon or Venus. The outer planets, while they impact us personally, they also impact us collectively. And and that's the societal, that's like what we're all going through. Okay. And so this book talks about that there really are cycles to life where you have kind of, summer, you have spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And astrology is very much based on that as well. Like a lot of when you're learning astrology, you learn about what are the summer signs, what are the winter signs. And they all have kind of a resonance. So this book talks about Western history, particularly like Western Europe and the United States. Okay, so that's the cycles that the book talks about. It's the cycles that I've looked at. So there are all sorts of other things that have been probably going on in Asia, and they may have their own cycles in Africa. But for the purposes of this talk, for who we are watching, for the most part, is people in the Western world. So, if we look at these cycles, they really start with, if you coming off of some sort of crisis, you kind of have a high. So like, just for an example, we had World War II. And when people came back from World War II, that's when we had the baby boomer generation. That's when we had suburban expansion. That's when you have this kind of expansion. And there is a much more of a, like, everyone's just so happy that everything's chilled out that, they're just like, oh my God, we survived. So there's kind of this high is what he calls it. And there is, it's kind of a time of prosperity. It's also a time of a little bit less individual and more people. What's the word I'm looking for, Susan? When, like conformity, a little bit more of a conformity time, because people are like, I don't want the drama. I'm just going to get along, right? Then you move into the awakening, which is like the next generation that was born during the high is like, okay, I want to expand. I want to, become more individualistic. I want to look at human rights. It's more of like an expansion of the soul. And then there's the third turning, which is the unraveling, when things kind of have gone too far. And so there's kind of a societal, like society's falling apart. It's like the culture wars. It's like people start arguing with each other. People are a lot more selfish. There's a perception, at least, that there's increase in crime. There's an increase in like gender fluidity. Like this is like cycles that have been happening for hundreds of years, by the way. It's most interesting, I think, for us that lived through some of these cycles to look at it in the 20th century and 21st century, but this has been going on for hundreds of years where there's kind of like these predictable cycles. And after the unraveling, you have a crisis again.
Oh,
I know. But look around. We've kind of been in a crisis for a little while now.
Yeah.
So while we want to hold on to certain things, we are in somewhat of a crisis point. And so in my video, when I go through this all in a little bit more detail, I'm also going to talk about how Uranus matches up with these particular cycles. So I just want to kind of give you this big picture that yes, we are in a crisis time, but we've been in a crisis time for several years, and it may last for another several years. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel because this is cyclical. Sometimes when things grow stagnant or things get broken, you have to shake things up, in order for it to settle out into the new place that it's going to be. So change is scary, change is hard. We do not like the way that this change is happening. There are different ways change can happen, and it can be more incremental, which is less destructive to society. Or it can be very dramatic and it can be very authoritarian. Okay, so obviously that's the road that was picked by some. And so here we are. And so let's look at, what does this all mean and what do I think is going to happen? So one of the things that Susan and I were talking about was just the degree of showmanship. Okay. So I don't know about you, Susan, but I turn on my news feed and like people who are like-minded are freaking out, right? People who have a different perspective, who believe things that we do not believe to be true, are celebrating things that we're like, whoa, that's not good. Tariffs, like, no bueno. Like, you don't understand the complexities of what's happening, right? Before I hopped on here, I watched another video, and they had like Dr. Phil like filming ice raids. Like, it's a show. So they broke down in this video that currently, in the past week, how much have we heard about people being deported? Like, it feels scary, doesn't it? It seems like, oh my God, we've got to take care of these people. But the truth of the matter is, there's been fewer daily raids and like people being sent back to their countries than there was on a daily basis under Biden. So
perspective, you guys, I told you perspective. When you're like this against the glass, you're not seeing the whole picture when you back up. And honestly, Obama was really a big proponent of, this type of thing. He really did. He deported a lot of people. So I'm not saying, and I don't think Dabney's saying that what Trump is doing is right.
no,
He's certainly doing it for the shock value, right? Like, for instance, if the daily, average was over 30 days, he's trying to do it all those 30 days in 5 days, right? I get it, but please understand, it's all about perspective, and step back and start comparing and asking the questions. How many did Biden do? How many did Obama do? How many did Bush do? Start educating yourself instead of letting that poison just be thrown into your brain and into your psyche. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I want you to interrupt me because that's exactly right. It's like, that's what they're trying to do, is scare people. They're bullies. They're trying, and I personally live in California, and I got scared. I don't live in Southern California, but I got scared because, there is fire danger. When I heard that they're going to cut off FEMA and they're not going to help the victims of the wildfires. And then I saw Gavin Newsom show up on the tarmac with his finger pointed, and now he's backed off from that. So we have to also internalize that our leaders have to grow a spine, and they have to stand up to the bully. There has to be a commiserate response to what's happening in order to get the balance. The universe is always trying to find balance, and we are out of balance. Okay. We've gotten out of balance since COVID, particularly. Okay. And so how are we going to come together and get balance again? There's going to be lots of different ways. Okay. But looking at the Wizard of Oz, I was just talking to Celeste Brooks, I was talking to Susan Lin, the new movie Wicked, the Wizard of Oz has a lot of great lessons about what's happening right now in that movie Wicked.
Seriously.
It's like there is not necessarily the ability to do what they're saying they're going to do. And these executive orders and things like that, while they are scary and can be very damaging, keep in mind that it's not all going to happen. Okay. And there are people on the ground fighting. Now, let's just, keep in mind too, that the hubris, often the universe has a way of smacking it down.
Oh.
So Susan and I were also kind of chatting the other day that it had come into both of our thoughts about the myth of Icarus. I won't bore everyone with the Icarus mythology, but just to give you the shorthand, Daedalus was a craftsman who was Icarus's father, and the two of them were imprisoned by the king in a labyrinth. And the only way to escape, Kitty saying hi. Daedalus said, okay, I'm going to craft these wings, but they're not awesome because I don't have like all my tools. Like I don't have like awesome glue. I've got like some, candle wax. So we're going to get out of here, but you have to be careful. Don't fly too high or don't fly too low. If you go too high toward the sun, the wax is going to melt. If you go fly too low, the salt water is going to spray up and it's going to mess with the wax and the wings will come off. The sun didn't listen. He thought he knew it all. And he flew too close to the sun. You've heard that. Don't fly too close to the sun. The wax melted. His wings fell off. He came crashing down to the sea and he died. His father was judicious and landed. So what I love about mythology is it gives us this, kind of universal truths, right? Like that have been around forever that we can still identify with. And I think we are in this time astrologically of a lot of endings before the new energies coming in. And so it came into my consciousness, I was going to do a video about Icarus. And then I found out that the new moon coming up in a couple of days on January 29th, the asteroid Icarus is right next to that new moon. So I think it's important for everyone to kind of look at these synchronicities because there's a lot of like bluster, there's a lot of actions, there's a lot of overconfidence, there's a lot of things being said that are incredibly damaging. There's a lot of people, not enough people yet, but there are a lot of people who are like, wait, that wasn't what I thought I was going to get, So I think seeds are being planted right now with Icarus there, where it's like you're flying a little too high, you're a little too big for your britches. And in our personal lives, where are you flying a little too high or being a little big for your britches? That's something that on this new moon that you can kind of internalize. But from a much more mundane, societal, I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating. And it's interesting how it pops into our brains and then there it is in the sky. That's guidance. You know what I mean? That's truly guidance.
Right. And so what I'll say is we've already had one of the major things flip over, which was Pluto is in Aquarius. And we've talked a lot about that. So I'm not going to talk too much more about that. But what we haven't talked about on this channel is the other big cycles that are happening, which is Neptune is going into Aries in March. Okay, that's a big one. Right now, Neptune's in Pisces. And I think I may have talked a little bit about the fact that that can be delusion, that can be mass delusion, that can be cults. Okay, that, it has a high side, it has a high spiritual side, and it can be something collectively interior. We can have spiritual awakenings and there's good things that can happen. We've seen astrology flourish. We've seen Susan's channel flourish, but there is also the cautionary tale, which I think we've seen in spades, which is people falling into addiction, falling into morass, falling into like not really knowing what's real and what isn't real. Neptune going into Aries, there is an empowerment. There is an awakening. There is a new kind of a new potential. Let's say that we're going to have a lot of Aries energy because Saturn's going to go into Aries too. And the two of them are going to be sitting right next to each other. So when Saturn's in Aries, I think that's good that Saturn likes being in Aries. Saturn is currently in Pisces and Saturn is restriction. Okay. And Saturn is responsibility and accountability and being in this kind of like, kind of a universal love and delusion and addiction and escapism. Saturn's like, I don't know what to do with this. This is not my cup of tea. When Saturn's in Aries, Saturn's like, oh, I got it. We're going to war. We're gonna get stuff done. We're making things happen. Neptune going into Aries, there can be, one thing that we have to watch for is a rise of like Christian nationalism and kind of, or just any kind of religious fervor, people really willing to take up arms in the name of anything that has to do with religion. But it also has to do with fixing the problems of society that we've put off. So the last time Neptune was in Aries, we had the Civil War. So I'm not predicting a civil war per se, but there was a building of things that had been coming, right? Like we all know that, the South and the North were not seeing eye to eye. A lot of it just was based on economics, right? And states' rights, but also
and slavery.
I was just going to say, and the enslavement of
humans.
Humans. Right. So, yes, it's like maybe more complicated, but maybe it's not. And on some level, that Neptune in Pisces, it was like, oh, we're just, like compassion started to rise in people. There was an awareness that maybe this isn't okay. But there wasn't really any sort of strong
action.
leaders.
There was no action, no like gumption. That's right. What Aries is going to bring is gumption.
Right. So Aries is going to like take it to the next level where it's like, okay, we need to fix these problems. We need to fix homelessness. We need to fix addiction. We need to fix like all of these
racism, all the injustices too. There's something about Aries and injustice. I didn't know that. Is that true?
That is absolutely true because Aries is about the right to exist. So those who yeah, so it's the like I deserve to be here. I have a right to be a human. It's like it correlates with like the baby, coming into the world. It correlates with springtime. It's like, the bud bursting forth as a flower. And so a lot of times like Chiron in Aries, there's like a wound around the right to even exist. And so that's what Aries is like, hey, I deserve attention. I want to make this happen.
This is like DEI. This is like, I deserve a right to be considered for these positions and not to be overlooked and not to be diminished. And don't tell me to shut up or don't tell me to get in the back of the line. None of that stuff is going to work. So you guys can see, I hope, how that area, it might not be war. It might be civil unrest. It might be all of us coming forward. And I mean all of us, like allies, along with people that are having their rights taken away and saying, no, we're not exactly. They have the right to exist as much as I do.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the thing is like, we've got, as much as like everything's kind of okay, like I just read today, like Marilyn Manson, after 4 years of investigating, even though 12 women said he sexually assaulted them and he had several women provide testimony about domestic abuse. Oh, we're just not going to prosecute him. Like that happens. Right. People don't, like there are injustices, a third of African-American men my age have been incarcerated. Right. But they're not like disproportionately, doing crime, even though that's what would. So there are things that are broken. And so Neptune going into Aries is kind of like, we need to change what's happening. It's like action finally arrives. And Saturn is there to say, let's make this right action. Now, all of this Aries energy, though, is very male. So I'm not going to, gaslight you into saying like, oh, it's the dawning of the age of Aquarius and like flowers and sunshine. It's not like that. It's much more about kind of the battle between right and wrong, the battle for people who have been marginalized. And this, kind of male energy may come back into fashion. This kind of, the bros and things like that. They are going to feel empowered. But that's the perspective. It's the pendulum. Okay. So the next piece that I want to bring into this is Uranus. Do you have any questions about that? Am I being too?
No, I mean, I would just say I saw the same thing months ago with the men. It's the way I see it is it's almost the men are reacting to the fact that women don't want to marry them. Women don't want to have kids. Women are divorcing them. Women are starting to protect themselves because they're like, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm safe in a health, concern sort of way if I get pregnant. So this women are just putting a lot of like, whoa. And that's new. Like they're not used to that. And so they're going to push back. So I agree with Dabney. You guys need to be careful because I feel like not this year, but I mean coming for years. Some men are going to feel obligated that they can just, your body, my choice. That sums it up right there, right? Uh-oh, I think I lost Dabney. Well, we'll bring her back in just a second. That's funny. Every time Dabney and I get together, we were just talking about this, we have gremlins. I don't know what it is. From the very first video we did together, the very first video, we have had gremlins. Even on this video, we had issues to begin with, and now she's been booted off of my Zoom. So it's like, I don't know if I need to leave milk and cookies out for these gremlins or like if they need chocolate or cheese. Like I'm at this point, I'm willing to give them chocolate, give them cheese. I'm willing to like make amends. Like whatever Dabney and I did in a past life that you guys have caught up with us and want to make us pay. I'm ready. I'm ready to do what I need to do to make it right within reason, right? Like I'm not gonna, sign my soul over or nothing like that. But I will give you some of my cheese and I will give you some of my chocolate. But that's about it. All right, we're back. We're back. We're back. We're recording. Thank you. Sorry about that little glitch there. But she lost me when I said I think guys are mad because women aren't sleeping with them. So, but you will have heard that probably. So we can move on now because hopefully the internet gremlins are done messing with us, and we can move on to Dabney's next point.
Yes. Okay. Before we get there though, Susan and I have to acknowledge the fact that ever since we like started collaborating, the very first time we collaborated, I did like the whole thing and it didn't record. And then
on my behalf, it was me. You guys, I had done hundreds of videos. The first time I meet this woman, I'm like, that was so great. I really enjoyed working with you. And I go back and I'm like, it's just me. And it's her voice, but there's no Dabney. And I'm like, how did this even happen? So for some reason, we have some kind of past life thing where we pissed off some gremlins or something. I don't know. But while you were gone, I was offering up my chocolate and cheese, you know what I mean? And trying to make it right with them. So yeah. But here we are.
And I've been thinking about you and probably others out there. Every January, I quit sugar. Every January. I can't this time. Like, I just can't. Like, I've just been eating so much chocolate. I can't stop myself. So, but I'm giving myself grace because this is the crisis I've been talking about, right? So I think in a crisis, we need chocolate. So I heard that there is a serious anger over Me Too, the progress that has been made by women, there's kind of this sense of feeling like white men especially are feeling abandoned. They're feeling like they no longer have as much power. And so with all this Aries energy coming in, a lot of that's going to kind of swing back in their direction. Now, that said, Aries is about a fight. And so we have some fight. We need courage. One of the good things that I think is going to emerge with Saturn and Neptune going into Aries is new powerful leaders. And that's one of the things that I've been struck by is like the lack of leadership, even on our own team. Like, come on, man. Like, part of why we are where we are is the collective leadership, And so part of what I think is coming is I don't think it's going to look like it does now, where it's still kind of left versus right, neighbor versus neighbor. I think that we are coming into a bottom versus top, more class society. So if there is kind of a crisis brewing, the crisis is going to shift. And that may be ushered in by difficult financial times. And that does not mean that like your 401k is going to get wiped out, but it may mean that we do have tariffs. It may mean we have more isolationist policies that change how America's viewed on the world stage. I mean, he's saying he's going to do these things, but will it ultimately deliver on the promises that people thought they were voting for? No. We know that, but they don't. You know, you watch some of these voters who are like, well, the tariffs, attacks on the other country, and we're just, America first. And it's like, oh my God, dude, you're really not getting the macroeconomic picture. You're getting nothing. You're just believing con artists. So, the wizard will be exposed, I do believe. And then not only do we have Neptune going to Aries, Saturn going into Aries, very new energy where there could be, like I said, new leaders emerging that, smack the bully down, or the bully could, get bigger. And we have to find our courage to kind of get things back in balance. Okay. So there's all these possibilities with astrology, and it really has to do with what do we do collectively? What do we do individually? So the next big thing that I want to talk about is Saturn moving into Aries. We talked about that. Uranus moving into Gemini. Okay. So that is happening starting in July. Now, Uranus is the planet of unexpected change, lightning strikes, things that we can't predict, okay? It's in the sign of Gemini. Historically, when Uranus goes into Gemini, what we get is, and now the gardeners are here, by the way, so now you're going to hear leaf blowers. So
it's going to be okay. It's going to be
like how it's going to go. But we're going to have like such huge inventions and breakthroughs, and things are not going to, like, we're not even going to know, like, it's going to be beyond like self-driving cars. There's things that we don't totally know are going to be coming. And sometimes these things, they're called like black swan events. Like they're things we don't see that change the course of history, right? Like the Gutenberg Bible changed the course of history. The electric light bulb changed the course of history. So what we're looking at is a whole new world that has not yet arrived, that will be coming soon. And that world, I do not believe, will include the petty culture wars that we're fighting right now. And that's a lot,
because there's too much at stake. There's too much at stake to when me and the MAGAs are both trying to get health care, right. we're going to end up in the streets together. And this is what I always saw. So I think that you're right about the collective. And I think the collective is going to come together more than ever in this class sort of way, instead of red and blue sort of way. And you know what just happened today? And I don't remember the name of it, but there's a new Chinese AI. Have you heard about this? This new deep, yeah. What's it called? Deep
I'd have to look it up.
Maybe it's DeepSeek. Yeah, and this Chinese AI is open source, which means anybody, like a high schooler, can mess with it, a college kid, me, anybody. China just said, do what you will with it. Well, this AI is light years faster than anything that our precious tech bros have come up with. And NVIDIA, who makes chips, their stock is plummeted.
Yeah, tenfold.
Plummeted today. Like NVIDIA has been like the poster child of the stock that you want to own, the poster child of the future. This is the way of the future. And then China just said, and you know what's interesting too, Dabney, is how this thing was developed wasn't like China didn't say, we're going to show those American people. No, this was like a side project. They were actually doing something else, and they made this AI to help them do this other thing that they were doing. And then they were like, oh, that's pretty cool. Let's just release it. They didn't even, they were trying to.
It's not even on our radar, right?
No, it wasn't on anybody's radar. They weren't trying to diss us or trying to outproduce us. They just did it. And it actually calls into question how many billions of dollars the United States and private industry has poured into AI to be shown up by this instant, like this to me is very Uranus. It's very like overnight, like instantaneously. We went to bed last night, we woke up this morning. What is happening, right? And that AI runs circles around what our chat GPT does now. And you can only imagine what Dabney's talking about. Now you're talking about things, technology on a scale that we can't imagine. I literally cannot fathom. And that's the Gemini in Uranus. So yeah, there's things happening that are the masculine energy is going to double down. But you know what? Mars is here. So the feminine energy might double down. And also we might all stand up for each other and be more vocal about me too, right? Or this person deserves to be in this space with me. It's not that simple, but it's not all bad. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of potential for good in here.
I think it's embracing the new. I think that's the big thing, is recognizing that the change is here. The change is coming. Like we're already seeing the rise of the bros being empowered and saying, you know, hideous things like your body, my choice, and things like that. That's here. It's happening. So, you know, this has happened throughout society. And like, that's what I really enjoyed about that book, The Fourth Turning, was it talks about like the unraveling. There is a division. There is like a tremendous amount of like just selfishness and autonomy and like people and also like pessimism. Like, oh, you know, the world is going to burn and climate change, there's nothing we can do about it. And like, so here's the thing. We have been for 20 years probably feeling the economic disparities. We've been feeling climate change breathing down our necks, and now it's here. So once you enter the crisis, you have to deal with the crisis. And so all of this kind of like, you know, executive orders about DEI and like executive orders about, you know, stupid performative things are not going to be sustainable. Because that's, at the end of the day, like, if there was a real war, you need all hands on deck. Like, this is not, you know, it's like a luxury to be whining about these things, is basically what it is. It's like humans have this need to stir up trouble. And so like they feel good for a while, then they like kind of like want to expand and like have all these ideas. And then they're just like, well, everything's going well, so I'm just gonna like, I'm mad about this and I'm mad about that. And it's like the same people that are upset about eggs are buying like, you know, really expensive trucks and also like, you know, investing in meme coins. Like, let's think about that. Like, are you really living on a dirt floor? Like, so sometimes there's this like existential shakeup is needed for some people, not all of us, but some people have this need for an existential shakeup to wake up to what's really important. And I think during a crisis, I think there's sometimes unconscious people manifest crises in their lives in order to pull themselves into a more conscious state.
And to break through that the crisis so they can break out of it. Like they can't break out of it. So they create the crisis, the drama, to be able to have the fight, to be able to clear the air and give somebody a chance to walk out or to move.
The sad thing is we all have friends that are like that, like the energy vampires that are constantly like creating crisis and drama in their lives. We've all had those people in our lives. And oftentimes they don't learn the lesson, right? But that happens on a collective scale too. And so we just have to kind of recognize that we're part of this kind of wave that is happening right now, but we don't know where it's going to end up. And historically speaking, there will be a happy ending. We are not going to end up like communist China. Will there be problems? Will there be pain? Could there be a world war? Could there be massive? All of that is on the table. And I'm not, you know, saying it's not, but it may only last a few years, and then there's a rebirth. And so I think we really are in this period where we're gearing up to kind of have to grow up. You know, I was talking to another astrologer. I love Christopher Renstrom. And I was like, what do you think all this Aries energy is? He's like, grow up. That's it. Like, America, it's time to grow up. Like, put on your big girl and big boy pants and like,
Stop acting like a toddler. Stop throwing fits, right?
Right. And so
stop taking other people's toys like Greenland. You know what I mean? Like, it's not your toy. Stop.
It's a shiny object distraction to get everyone outraged while they pick your pocket. And the picking your pocket is not going to last because Pluto's in Aquarius. That is Pluto in Capricorn. Picking your pocket, because I'm the big bully in charge, is Pluto in Capricorn. We're in Pluto in Aquarius. Now we're just a couple months in. So, but we saw Luigi. We've seen what's coming. So I guess for everybody out there, I would say take deep breaths. This year has a lot to do with developing your faith, turning toward love, turning toward forgiveness. This is things for you, this is things for people who watch Susan Lynn, who I know are awesome people, because a lot of you have come over to my channel and I feel like I've made some amazing friends already.
Nice.
So yeah, Jupiter's going to go into Cancer. There is going to be kind of a new nationalism, maybe a renewal of pride in our country, which right now I have very little patriotism and very little pride in our country, which is kind of a first, because I'm a very patriotic person. That's why you and I do this, right? Is because we love our country. So the nodes are in Pisces and Virgo, which means letting go of worry. Try to let go of worry. Try to let go of things you can't control. Try to let go of control. Try to have a little bit of faith that there's a bigger picture at work here. One last little anecdote I was going to give, which was something that I don't remember. I think it was on someone else's channel and I gave this anecdote, but I think it's good perspective. This is that like 50-foot perspective. Just an example. You know, we all buy so much crap from China, correct? I mean, who doesn't, right? Well, if we have horrible tariffs and things are more expensive, maybe we stop buying so much junk that we don't need because it's actually expensive. And maybe that's good for the environment. Maybe fast fashion, where like younger people, like every 2 weeks need a new outfit, comes to an end because you can no longer afford that. And that means it's not filling up our landfills. So, and the production, like polluting our skies and like using our resources. So I think it's kind of like my Protestant Reformation thing. Like there's something bigger happening that's going to change. It may take several years before we get there, but in the meantime, breathe, meditate, do creative things, turn to love. That's what you're being asked to do, because this is really kind of the little like trailer for the movie. And the movie is like a 3-hour epic movie. And, you know, you don't really know what the end is when you watch the trailer. And we're just in the trailer. And there's a lot of shiny objects being thrown around to freak you out. But I think in the end, this has to do with a bigger cycle. And there will be a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, I agree with you. This isn't the end. And I also want to say something you said earlier that, you know, we've been in the crisis for probably since his first term, right? We were probably in a crisis since 2016. But you know what? During the Biden years, we had really a lull. We really had a time to catch our breath. So I want to point that out, that even in times of crisis, there's going to be times where you can catch your breath, where there's times where you can, you know, where it's not that bad. So try to, and you know, when we were catching our breath, we were still paying attention to 45, right? Because he was still out there doing things. And we were trying to make him have justice. We spent those 4 years, instead of catching our breath, we spent those 4 years trying to make sure he was going to come to some kind of justice. And not only did we not get that, but now the man is in charge again. So this just pretty much shows you that getting involved every day of every hour of every month, that it gets you nothing, right? Instead, and I'll just share with you, and Dabney asked me before we started recording, like, how are you doing? And you know what, my spirit guides, and you're going to know this, because if I have to do it, you have to do it. That's how I'm going down this year. I'm telling you what, I'm going to take as many of y'all as I can with me. And that means that my spirit guides are like, Susan, make 2025 your best year ever. You just mind your own business. You do what you need to do to help people. You create programs, classes, events. You're going to be so busy making sure that people have, sort of intellectual food, spiritual food. Like, this is my calling this year, not to get caught up in, my God, the lower vibration of the shite show, right? Which is going to be there. That's the movie Dabney's talking about. It's going to be there. It's going to be on the big screen. You know what? If you're starting a garden, you're going to be busier. You're going to be too busy to run in the house and learn what this man is doing on the daily, right? Have the perspective, back up, understand that everything you see and hear is actually created to freak you out. It's not news. Everything he does, even though it might be real in a sense, it's over dramatized to freak you out. That's the game at foot here. So step back and say, just like Danny said earlier, how many people have been, deported by other presidents? Let me put this into some perspective. I'm not saying that he's going to end up being an angel, but I'm saying that don't let him rob you of your joy, of your sanity, and of your health. Let's get through this together. Hang out with Dabney, check out her channel. Her videos on the history of astrology are so important and so helpful. And I've often told you guys, go back to history. Yeah, we're in the Civil War energy, we're in the French Revolution energy, but we're going to do it differently. We're not going to do it the same way. We're going to do it differently because we're different people now. But the energy is kind of similar, right? So you can learn a lot from that. And I think that can help you endure and even grow and shine in 2025. And remind you guys, if you're still watching, she's got an amazing class called Re-Envision?
Yeah, it's revisioning your life.
Revisioning your life. If you guys don't think you need that right now, my God, So what the guides are saying is invest in you. Invest $79-80 in you. It's the best money that you can spend. It really is. Even if you're like, I don't want to spend money because I don't know where the world is going. This is the place to spend it, is on your growth, your education, your peace of mind, your empowerment. This is where you spend the time, the resources, the money, whatever you have, spend it on you, and it'll pay off in big dividends.
Yeah. And if you can't afford it, that's totally fine. There's other ways to get in touch with what your vision is for this coming year.
Well, look at this video. There's Dabney and I do free videos. We're on here all the time doing free videos. So yeah, there's tons of content for you to learn and grow and catch a break and be inspired.
Yeah. Yeah. So just know that everything's going to be okay eventually. It's okay right now. That's the thing. If we're present in our lives right in this moment, it's okay. Like if you're dealing with a personal crisis, it's very different than the news scrolling, right? And then if you're in a personal crisis, you don't really care about what's going on in, an elementary school in Chicago because you're dealing with your personal crisis, right? And that's okay too. You deal with your personal crises. That's your personal astrology. That's your personal life. That's your life. You've got to deal with it. But when everything's okay and the birds are out there and Susan and I are here chatting and dealing with the internet outages of life, it's okay. And that's, I think, the place that we can get to where we're not somewhere else catastrophizing, because the catastrophe lowers the vibration. It feeds into this monster, and we don't want to feed the monster.
Yeah, we don't want to feed him. We don't want to give him any more. I said something on social media. I think I've given him, 8 years of a lot of my life, worrying about him, talking about him, forecasting, predicting. You know what? Let's stop. Let's freeze him out. Let's cut him off. Let's cut off his supply of energy, which is us. And let's bring our energy back to us and our loved ones and our community and our planet.
Yep, that's exactly it. Oh, so you're so wise, Susan. You're so wise.
No, really, I'm getting pissed off.
I got very angry.
Which is that Aries, right? Which is that Aries energy. Like, it's like, we're going to be done, you guys. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, men might be fed up, but we're fed up too. We're fed up too. And it's gonna be sort of like this civil rights era where, guess what? There was a time, Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn, where it was top down, get in line, stay in line. Pluto and Aquarius, guess what? We're going to be a little rowdier. We're going to be thinking about the collective more than our bosses or the corporation or the government. We're going to be thinking about our community. And look what's happening. Look what he's doing for us. Because now we are worried about our community. People online are saying, hey, I saw the ice. I saw them over there. I saw them over here. We're coming together. We're coming together. And guess who we're coming together against? It's him. He's bringing us together. And this energy is helping us get that energy. It really is. So whatever she said that, they were going to get, we're going to get too. It's not like the planets only give anger to white men. You know what I mean? Like, guess what? We all get a little bit of that gumption in our step, right? So it's going to be okay. And just make use of Dabney's channel. She has a free YouTube channel. If you have the resources, think about a reading, think about her classes. I've got classes coming. Take a deep breath, utilize your community. We're going to get through this together. Thank God. That's another thing. He created this community. This community wouldn't be here without him.
And that's the other thing I want everyone to really know is in this unraveling, which has been going on for decades, we've become very isolated. There is a reason, to some degree, men are mad because we are not paying attention to them in the same way we were, partly because they're isolated and they're just talking to each other and there isn't this human connection again. And so the irony that AI and all of this technological advancements coming out now, on some level, this crisis, I believe, will break through and bring us together as humans again. And community is a big part of that. And so I did a reading for a woman the other day and she was like, well, I just don't like to leave my house since COVID. And I think there are probably a lot of people out there like that. And if that does feel like you, there are online communities. And so that's the thing. Just don't feel alone. Make sure that it's a supportive environment, a supportive community. You want people that feed the best of you, not the worst of you. And I fear that a lot of people over the past 10 years have been kind of radicalized by the worst of us. And so, that's what I try to put a really positive energy out into the world because I know it's hard. It's hard even for the people that we disagree with. And the more that we can recognize that and we can find forgiveness in our heart to move forward. And if you're not ready to make nice, I get it. I'm not ready to make nice fully either.
I'm not
okay.
ready either.
Okay. Yeah.
But we have to make nice with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have to heal ourselves first. And then when they're ready, I think when the forgiveness really, the healing can come is when, and this is what they've always showed me for years. I'm in the street, there's a person standing next to me. It turns out we bump shoulders and that's a MAGA and I'm not a MAGA. And yet we're in the street for the same reason.
That's what's going to happen. That's
where the forgiveness starts. That's where you're not, wait, I thought. And then we find out, like I said in that video, the chocolate goes in the peanut butter, that old commercial. And you're like, wait a minute, we're here together, right? That's it. That's where we're going, you guys. Maybe we're not there yet. No, I'm not pushing anybody for sure. Because I think before we get there, you talked about, what did you call it? There was a kind of, the mess, the untangling,
the unraveling.
The unraveling.
Yeah.
Where we are now is the unraveling, because what I think is going to happen right now is that women and men are saying, I don't want to be with you because it was one thing that you were a MAGA, but now it really means something different. Like it's really cross some lines. And so I think we're still in that place where actually you're going to see more unraveling, more families getting separated, more people getting separated. That's kind of what I think we're in. But once we get on the other side of that, maybe you don't make it up with your family member, but you find out the neighbor is willing to move to your side of or you're meeting in the middle, right? Try not to be black and white. Like my whole video yesterday was about being flexible. Please be flexible. It's going to save you so much heartache, so much headache, and it's going to make this whole situation so much easier if you can just be flexible. And like Dabney said, have some perspective, back up, and really get some distance from it so that you can see it from a bigger picture.
And I'm telling myself that too, FYI. Like I'm right there with you. Like
it's not easy.
And I get irritable. I get, but then my husband's like, you get really irritable after you read the news. And it's like, wow, that I really do, because I take it personally. And so then like, I have to kind of take a step back and I have to say like, okay, well, this is all happening. So it's getting into your spiritual side. Like it's kind of getting into the perspective of like, okay, there's something bigger at play. Am I okay right in this moment? Are my loved ones okay in this moment? Like that's kind of how I'm getting through. So, and ultimately that's what I wanted to communicate here today, is just how to get through the energy of the next year, because 2026 is going to look totally different, because I don't think we're going to be dealing with this same person. It's going to be different. So will it be super easy? I think we'll still be in a crisis mode by then, but it's going to look different. So again, this is the trailer. Like, oh, winter is coming. Okay.
And the crisis mode might be us rebuilding. Like the crisis mode might be actually all that justice we've been wanting, right? Where that's crisis too, right? People being investigated in court trials, that's also crisis for somebody, right? So when she says crisis, I want you to think, oh my God, it's never going to end. It can move to a new kind of energy of discovery, of holding people accountable. That's also a crisis energy, right? So don't think crisis means always, I can't take any more, Susan. Crisis could also mean justice.
Yeah, I think that's, and also just kind of remembering spring comes after winter. The flowers bloom again. So like, and people get exhausted. People don't want to be exhausted, and we're all pretty exhausted. So I actually believe we're already in the crisis. We're past the unraveling. So I think we're already surviving the crisis, but we're just all going to get to a point, including them. They need to get tired. We're already tired.
Right.
But we have inklings of them getting tired, like when they also are pointing out that they've been lied to. When some people unfortunately need consequences, that it needs to impact them personally, which is sad. Like they can't extrapolate about like how
other people.
Right. They don't have that capacity.
No.
That's sad. But when it does impact them, then it's like, oh, well, that's not what I wanted. And so we go from there. So anyway.
Then they get in the street with us when their diabetic drugs are, $100 a pop instead of what Biden made them. They're going to experience this, you guys. Just take some deep breaths, take really good care of yourself. We're going to get through this. And check out Dabney's channel, Lawless Astrology, as well, her readings and her upcoming class, if you're interested in that. And we'll see you again really soon, right here on YouTube land.
Thanks, Susan.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dabney.
I'm glad it worked. I just think that you and I get little spirit gremlins.
For real. Like, really, can't they just like lay off and like give us a little break here and there? Because I think they can.
They're just hanging out.
They're just hanging out, being gremlins. Nice. That's so nice of them. It's all about your perspective, right? Thank you so much for watching this video today. I really appreciate your time and your energy. And I just want to let you know that I do have classes coming up. You can check my website, www.susanlynnmedium.com. Also, don't forget about my online community, which is 850 people and growing, where you can speak your truth, where you can find people just like you and share your dreams. I mean, your dreams. Well, no, I mean your dreams for your life, but also your dreams that you had when you were asleep. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You can join people like that. Also, don't forget that I'm going to have in-person events being planned right now. Pretty excited about that. Take really, really good care of yourselves. And for the little YouTube gremlins, thanks for stopping by. But we would rather not see you. Okay, bye everybody.